Welcome to Film Study, an all-American podcast with Lexi. I'm Lexi. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, all of the things. Also, be on the lookout for my upcoming web series, Worker Bees. I don't have a release date yet, but when I do, I'll let you know. Here's Mena and I's review and recap of 418. Came back for you. Hope you enjoy it. I have Mena on the pod. We were talking about the fact that some people might have blocked you.
Yeah, we were talking about how maybe some of your listeners might have me blocked. I am Saturn Interlude on Twitter, for those who don't know.
You're very opinionated.
I'm literally very opinionated. It's the Virgo in me. I can't help it. I have to voice my opinion at all costs. But I'm super excited to be on here today. Love your podcast. I listen to it every week for every episode. So it's so weird, nice. Like being on the opposite end and like being a guest. It's so strange, but really cool.
Thank you. That's crazy. I'm not even gonna lie. I stalked your page quite often.
Oh my god, dude. It's always so funny, like when I live tweet All American and I'll go back the next day and just like go through my tweets from when I was live tweeting the episode. I feel like I just tweet a bunch of gibberish, like out of excitement. No. So embarrassing, like going back and like reading my tweets from when I was watching the episode.
No, not embarrassing. No, you always have such good tweets.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to Jordayla.
As most people know, I am very opinionated about Jordayla. I have shipped them for a long time. Like, I'm one of the OGs, so it's so crazy to see how full circle it's come. So, and I love All American. I've watched All American since I was in high school, so I'm really excited to be on here.
That's awesome. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you.
And maybe this is a step. I mean, this is alluding to like what happened near the end of the episode, but like I also feel like this is a step towards healing the nation, you know, bringing Olivia's and Jordayla's together, maybe.
No, I saw the tweet. It was so funny. This person was like, NK is hilarious for finally giving us like a solid Olivia, like Jordayla core 4 scene when the fandoms are
literally split.
Like, it's so funny that finally 4 seasons in we get what we were asking for, and now the fandoms are kind of fighting.
Right.
But maybe this is a step in the right direction. Maybe we can heal and come together.
I think so. Maybe my podcast can be as short. I feel like and like I hope people like don't come for me in the comments, but I hope that like I'm a step towards I'm a Olivia and a Jordayla, and like let's just heal, guys. There doesn't need to be discourse every single day.
The hostility is just too much, and it's just these ships don't even affect each other, so there really shouldn't be that much discourse anyways. And it's so crazy because where we're at in the show right now, like the 4 people that are constantly put against each other in discourse are cool with each other at the moment.
Right.
Like Liv and Layla are super cool right now. Probably the healthiest their friendship has ever been. Obviously,
Correct.
Spencer and Jordan had their little squabble, but they're fine now. Layla and Spencer are friends again. Like, there's just
literally got a scene. Yeah, just got a scene with them together.
There's just no need for the discourse anymore. You know what I mean? And now that Jimone has gotten that closure that I think a lot of people were waiting on, and they're kind of on separate paths. And
that's a nice way to put it.
And we'll get into it. But now that we finally crossed this, I guess, closed
threshold.
Out a chapter and are entering a new one, maybe we can find peace in that.
Maybe we can find peace. Maybe we can find peace. With that being said, what were your thoughts about the episode?
I really liked the episode. I've honestly really enjoyed 4B in general. I really feel like it's been a really good second half, really good strong half of the season. Especially this episode, I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I would give it 5 stars. I really enjoyed this episode and watching it live.
I too enjoyed the episode. I think the beginning went a little slow for me, and then it like started to
was really strong.
Yeah. And like really it was like 10 minutes, 15 minutes in, it was just like they like really started to like pick it up.
Bam.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I really did enjoy it. Start getting into the storylines, and like, audience, stay with us because we gonna go through this kind of quick. But Laura, this was the quickest storyline I've ever seen All American do. Literally, Laura being swamped, Coop coming in almost immediately because she needs to find a job, taking calls for Laura, apparently prioritizing a list for who she should call back, and then starting a law review
Yeah.
page, but really just helping her. And I'm just like,
I kind of saw this coming with how close they got with, Laura helping Coop out with her legal troubles. I will say this was probably one of the weaker storylines of the episode. It just feels so random. I
it's in
feel
this.
like they
Yeah, go
don't
ahead.
know what to do with these two characters right now, so they're like, let's just throw them together. It just feels really random to me
Oh, really?
personally.
I think it didn't feel random, and that's probably because my good friend Monda saw this coming as well, and like saw them putting her like saw Coop working with Laura. I actually think, as far as Laura's storyline goes, like, season 3 for Laura was the most, I think, um how do I describe it? Sort of like haphazard. Like, she didn't have, the only storyline that she really had was the Black Lives Matter storyline with Liv, and that was more so on Liv's end. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that this season they've actually been intentional about getting her to say, like, oh, what am I gonna do? And oh, let me open up this law practice, let me help people. So I actually feel like they've actually had like a through line for the first time with Laura since her
Mm-hmm.
DA campaign, which I've really appreciated. I just don't. I just think that Coop is the chess piece that they keep moving around, and I'm quite frankly a little surprised that they have not gotten her back into music. I didn't think that it would
I
last
was
this
literally
long.
about to say that. I thought it was going to be a temporary thing where we see Coop heal her relationship with music and eventually get that back there. Maybe we're headed towards that direction, but it's moving really slow. I mean, we
It is
haven't really
moving at
seen that
a
yet.
snail pace. It's moving at a snail pace.
And Coop and her music, I would argue, is one of the hearts of All American and has been for a really long time. So it's just weird to see them not pivot back in that direction just yet.
Yeah. So it will be interesting to see how they take it. I will say this, even though I'm not thrilled about Coop and Laura like teaming up, because I love Laura, and I guess Coop is on a neutral for me right now. I don't dislike her. But I am excited, however, because, and I said this the last episode, is because like Coop is, she's the comedic relief of this very dramatic show.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so I'm really excited to see Monet and the character of Laura get to like lean on those comedic chops more. So that's like one thing that I am looking forward to. But yeah, that was it. Coop and Laura are working together now, so it'll be interesting. Um, Speaking about Laura, her husband, who's really Grace's
Yeah,
husband,
this
Billy.
storyline, I don't know what they're doing with Billy and Grace. I don't know if they're headed back there romantically or if he's just really passionate about her taking this position. I'm a
He's
little
really just passionate.
perplexed.
He's really just passionate.
Oh
He's been
God.
this way since the beginning. They've always had an affection for each other. So basically what's happened is he's losing the principal vote. He call or Carter somehow Carter is there. And he's talking about it with him. Meanwhile, Carter's also talking about how he has this job opportunity in Oakland. Preach overheard them, and he's like, y'all are both being stupid. You need to be direct. Billy, you need to ask Regina to step aside. Carter, you need to be direct with Grace about moving to Oakland. So he talks to Regina, Billy does, and then literally says, "Oh, but she said she's only gonna step aside if I get a new like a dean of student affairs." But it's literally like, Carter just told you how freaked out he was about about telling Grace that he's moving. So why would he offer her that job?
the timing is just so weird. It makes you wonder, are they headed back in that direction romantically?
I truly don't think that they are, but I think that the writers just don't care. Like, they don't care what their relationship seems like, um, even though it seems very, like, shady.
It's
And
extremely shady. It's so weird to me. We were
it
talking about this in a
it
group chat that
is.
I'm in about it's just I can't tell what direction they're heading in yet. And I know obviously we're not gonna get into like next week that much, but I know they're locked in together at Crenshaw High next week for Halloween to like scare off vandalism, people who are coming to like vandalize the school. So I just don't know where they're headed in with Billy and Grace just yet. It's a little strange, but we'll see what happens.
It is, and we'll talk more about that when we get to predictions. But it was just very interesting. But Carter ended up asking Grace to move with him to Oakland, and she told him about this job offer. So they left on
Mm-hmm.
sort of weird, a sort of weird note, uh, which again we'll talk more about when we get to the end. Um, Layla. That's not a good segue, but Layla, our girl Layla is on an apology tour. It's really interesting because I feel like only the girls have apology tours on this show. Like, uh, Liv had an apology tour last season uh, when she was sort of apologizing, like after her family found out about her
Mm-hmm.
relapse. Um, and I thought that was really interesting. And then just to see now Layla being on her apology tour for like everything that went down this season, but she basically ends up apologizing to Coop, apologizing to Clay, apologizing to her dad, like writing these letters and basically giving them to people throughout this episode. Um, Also Patience, who was absent,
Not in the
but
episode, which is
yeah,
so
not in
weird
this.
because Layla and Patience have especially been at odds. So you would think that she would need to be present in this episode for Layla's arc specifically, since she was going on this apology tour. That was a little bit strange, but
Legitimately, it should. Because I feel a certain way about Layla apologizing to Coop. I'm not gonna say that she shouldn't. No, I'm gonna say she shouldn't have apologized to Coop. What did she need to apologize for? No, I
I
understand what she.
I
I
see
was.
both sides. Like, when you're struggling with your mental health, like, it's really easy to lash out on the people closest to you and freak out over little things. And, like Layla did, she put her walls up, she became a control freak. But there are just certain things that I feel like Layla didn't need to apologize for. And a lot of those things I feel like were in relation to Coop.
And that's my whole thing. And here's why I'm glad it played out the way that it did on screen, is because Coop also, I'm not gonna say she apologized back, even though I think that she should have. She did admit her wrongdoing in the fact that, she wasn't honest and that she was messing with Layla's business and messing with
Like,
Layla's
this is a
money.
business, this is her
Exactly.
livelihood.
Exactly. Messing with Layla's business and messing with Layla's money. So I appreciate that Layla recognized on her end that she could have been a better friend in recognizing what Coop was going through. And so for that reason, I'm like, okay, this is like justified. But as far as like basically kicking her off the label, that wasn't even something that she did. She didn't, and they made this comment about like firing Coop. She didn't really fire Coop. Like,
Coop
quit.
left.
Coop quit before she even had a chance to fire her, and then she didn't tell Layla. And so it's just like the Coop apology was very, like, a very interesting one to highlight. And to your point, I think it would have made more sense if the patient's apology would have been highlighted, because they've been spending so much time on that particular storyline.
I agree.
But I'm glad that whatever Coop and Layla are on good terms again, for what
Yeah,
that's
it
worth.
was really nice to just see Layla in general kind of get closure with these people and make amends because she's been in pain for a really really long time, and she's had her walls up for a really really long time. And so it was just really nice to see this new side to her. I don't think I've seen Layla like this on All American in a really long time. Like, she
Hmm.
just seems so at peace right now. She seems so content and happy and light. And
She
it's just
does.
really refreshing to see this side of her again.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, even to your point about like getting closure with the people that she needs, she and Spencer had another conversation. They haven't had really a conversation between just the two of them since 402, her birthday party. And so it was it was funny a little bit because I don't think I was expecting it when it came on screen. But again,
I
it's
know,
just
I jumped.
nice.
I was like, no way, this
I
is
know. I
not
was just like, this is so uncomfortable. I was not anticipating that at all. But it was nice to see in the sense that it did signify that she was just in a different, healthier place. And one of the reasons
right.
she's in
Like
a
the
different
fact that she can be friends with Spencer and talk to him and not feel this awkwardness is a big step for her because she used to not even be able to hold a conversation with him because of
right.
how hurt she was. This really shows how she's progressing and how she's healing him. And it's just really nice to see because Layla has been going through it for a really long time. So it's just nice to see her in a new light.
She has, and I think um, to that point, like she's been there in the background, but being more willing, as you said, to like talk to him and like be I think be more vocal and upfront about her feelings as well. In a healthy way, I think has been really nice to see rather than just being like there present physically. Has been really
Hmm.
cool. And again, one of the reasons why she was able to do that is Jordan.
No, literally,
And
Spencer said something to Layla that has stuck with me since I watched the episode. He said that it was so nice to see her be her old self again. And one of the biggest reasons why she was able to get back to that place is because of Jordan, but we'll get
yeah,
there.
exactly. No, no, and we're there. We're there. And so he has been obviously like helping her through uh, the majority of the season, and even like before this season. Um, as the audience well knows, because I talk about it all the time. So I'm just gonna get straight to he once again is helping her meeting up with her dad and Aaron. They had plans to meet up with her dad and Aaron for breakfast. And look, NK and Jennifer King, they were like, just go for it. Just go for it because not
They
Layla
wanted to
fixing his
make
collar.
history. They wanted to make CW history, okay? That scene
I
caught
looked
me
at I
so off
looked at the
guard.
president of Disney Channel and I said, I want to make history.
I wanted to make
And
history.
that's what this is.
That scene caught me so off guard because I don't think I've ever seen them so flirty.
Yeah. Yeah, and
And I
then
think
like
a lot of
period,
that,
like period.
like
I don't think
period.
that
I
I've
think a
ever
lot
seen
of
them
that
that
can be
flirty.
attested to Layla and how she's been opening up more and more and more every episode. And I just love the way that Greta has been playing Layla this season. Like, you can see it every single episode. Every single time she shares a scene with Jordan, like she opens up a little bit more and more and
Yeah.
more. And now that she's finally gotten that closure, she's a little bit more vulnerable and she's a little bit more light with him, and you really saw it in like this episode
Yeah. Yeah. And
especially.
and for him too, like spraying cologne. We have never seen Jordan spray cologne number one, let alone the whole bottle, because both Layla and Simone commented on it. But so literally right after she's fixing his collar, calls him handsome, this and that. He also, I have to add this in there. Um, her saying that his outfit was giving Grammys was giving me the same vibes as Spencer calling Liv's shoes dope. and Liv calling Spencer's cake really good. Like,
There was a
and
lot of sublivia, I feel like, implications in a lot of Jordala's scenes. Like a lot of it was giving early sublivia, especially the scene when they're at the kitchen table, but we'll get there. Like you can tell, you can feel the similarities between
you
the
can
dynamic.
the suit in season one, again the shirt talking about you look like you're dressed to go to the, he did not look like he was dressed to go to the Grammys, number one. And so like you said, like, yeah, the Grammys comment and the shoes and the cake comment, like there were definitely some good like parallels there.
And I feel like I feel like it was intentional too, but we'll get there with the core four scene. I feel like they emphasize the similarities even more. But
it's
obviously
true,
we'll get
true.
there.
In this episode, for sure, for sure. But they were, like we said, very quickly interrupted by Simone, and they assured her that she wasn't interrupting anything. But you know, just as the day went on and Jordan was hanging with Simone, which we'll get to his end of things, she went to breakfast with her dad and Aaron by herself. Didn't see him until later when he came to apologize for missing breakfast, and she was just like, "Oh well, Simone's here, and that's like important." And he was just like, "Yeah, but you're important too." I can't with them. I just can't with them.
And then also the fact that Simone told him to come to the event and support Spencer, and he brushed it off, and then Layla is giving him
Right?
puppy dog eyes and
It
immediately
says
wants
pretty
to go. Like,
please. Puppy
but
dog eyes,
according to
pretty
some people,
please.
they aren't emotionally cheating, guys. Like, they're just friends. Simone's overreacting.
And so that's like, right, right. And that's the thing, is that like Layla saying pretty please after, you know, Simone talks to Jordan and like is trying to get him to change his mind, because literally just, I feel like Simone's whole purpose in this episode, besides the the relationship stuff, was really, or I should say the romantic relationship stuff, was to get Spencer and Jordan talking again, because as he was showing
I
her through
have
the
to
campus.
say, that kind of bothered me a little bit. Like, Simone hasn't been on All American since the graduation episode, and I feel like a lot of the screen time that she had was taken up with this Spencer and Jordan storyline.
Yeah, I will agree that I wish that she wasn't used like as a plot device for Jordan and Spencer.
Like, it's almost as if their breakup was used as a plot device to push Spencer and Jordan together at the end of the episode. That was a
Legitimately.
little bit strange, considering, they have been together for a long time on the show. I don't know. It was a little bit strange to me. I do think their breakup was done well, and I do think that they got the closure that they needed. But that part was just a little bit strange to me. I know they needed a way to bring Spencer and Jordan back together. But I feel like we didn't have to rely on Simone as much as they did.
Right. Well, and I'll also add that, it was like she's the person that's just bringing a lot of stuff to the forefront for this
Mm-hmm.
episode, because not only was it about Spencer and Jordan and trying to get them to talk, very reminiscent, by the way, of uh, early season 3 with her and Layla, actually. Um, but also like her being the one to find this yard yak thing, which I knew yard yak was gonna come up as a point. But her finding the post on yard yak about the NIL thing and Liv. Um, so her bringing that to Spencer's mind about Liv, so then he confronts Liv about it, and like defends her and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
it,
guess
it
it
was
makes
just
sense for a character that's been gone for so long to now come back and provide new perspectives of maybe things that other characters who have been on the show haven't seen. So I guess it makes sense in, that aspect.
yeah. I think so. I just think that Spencer and Jordan fight every like 3 to 5 business weeks.
It's so
So,
repetitive. They fight over the same thing.
which I don't mind, because it's just like it's showing that it's almost giving like Liv and Jordan, like they're brothers, and
It's
so I think
giving
that they're
brothers, like they're
exactly, they're
family.
brothers that fight every so often, and they're gonna brush it off and they're gonna forget it. And so I didn't think it was like, I never thought it was like as serious as it may have seemed to Simone. And maybe it was, but like for me as an audience member, I was just like, oh, but they're gonna be fine, like regardless
It's
of whether
because
or not.
they fought over the same things every single time. So when they fought this time, it's like you know they're gonna make up eventually. So it just wasn't
Right.
as big of a deal to
Right.
me.
Right. No, I agree. And so I think that Simone definitely her character could have been given more, and maybe not even more, but just different things to do besides this whole Spencer and Jordan thing. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. But as we were saying, she tried to get Jordan to go to this apparel launch that Spencer was having, and he was just like, "Nah, I'm fine. I'm tired of talking about Spencer and Wade." Layla says, "Pretty please," and he goes. And Simone, as they're arriving to this product launch, literally says, "I'm glad that you changed your mind." And I think that she thought that she was the one that changed his mind, and then Layla comes right on up and says, "The pleading worked."
The editing of that scene was so sickening. Like Simone says that, and then immediately Layla comes in and she's like, "I'm glad the pleading worked." My jaw was on the floor. Like they were not
That's
playing games
sickening.
with this episode at all.
They were not. Right after is just like, "Can I borrow your height?" And Simone's just like, "Oh, you don't need to ask permission." And so it was just like, really, you felt like what we saw in the trailer, which is that there, and as Simone says when she breaks up with Jordan, that there was a shift between Jordan and Layla that she missed. And Clay pointed it out to her without him knowing. It seemed that like she was dating Jordan, by saying like, "Oh, my powers used to work on her," which I roll, but like my powers used to work on her.
They never really worked, but you know.
Literally, she never wanted you, but go up. Until he came along and uh, basically her just watching them be them, and be laughing and joking throughout the event. So she left that event really seeing what it was, and this has just been a theme for them, especially for the people who have watched Homecoming. This is especially
Mm-hmm.
been a theme, is that they're just growing, and are the people that they're becoming, are those the same people that should be in a relationship together. And Simone is finally the one that's just like, it's not even that we're growing apart, we're just growing. And so why are we holding on to this relationship? That is, by the way, after she's very much like, "What's going on with you and Layla?" And you don't even see what's going on before your eyes. You don't even realize. And that's worse. And they had a whole fight. And look, I'm going to defend Simone. I'm going to defend Simone. Because I think she was right. I think she was right, is that he couldn't even admit what was going on with Jordan and Layla. And though she is not innocent with Damon, I think at least she admitted to something. So it was just a really
Mm-hmm.
sad breakup for them. You felt it because you know that they shared something together, and it was for a period
Yeah,
of
I
time in
would
their
never
life.
ever doubt that Jordan and Simone loved each other. I think they loved each other very deeply. I just think that I just think that the way that they left their relationship off before they went to college, like these are two people who maybe didn't know each other that well. And not only did they not know each other that well, but they didn't even know themselves that well. Like they were still kind
Right.
of figuring out who they were. And so then you have these two people who don't really know each other that well, don't know themselves that well. They're going to college and they're figuring who they are out. They're figuring out what their identity is. They're meeting people or reconnecting with people who can relate to these parts of themselves that they're discovering. And so when you go back to the person that you are with after this, I guess, era of self-discovery, it's going to be different. There's going to be a shift. And I feel like that's what happened with them. I mean, like Simone said, they just grew. I mean, they've been put in these new environments. They're figuring out who they are, and the people that they are now just don't fit with each other anymore. That's really all it is to it. I don't think it's a lack of love, like she said. I think they love each other deeply, but sometimes love just isn't enough.
And yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that there, because I mean, look, and you know, audience, I think that Jordan is Layla's person. I think Layla is Jordan's person. And so I just think that there's just like something deeper. And I think Simone and Damon have a connection, like a really, really deep connection. Um, and so to that point, and this is shifting a little bit to like what happened in Homecoming, but you know, your first love is so exciting, and it really like takes your breath away, but that's not to say that it's gonna be your only love and that you won't love other people in different ways, and that's okay. Like, that's okay. Very rarely do people end up with the person they can call their first love.
Absolutely, and
um
that's one of my biggest pet peeves when you see that first love dynamic and people say that, oh, this person could never love this person as much as they love their first love. Like, it is possible to love multiple people in your lifetime as
yeah,
you grow. There's different types of love.
right, right. No, I completely agree. And I think that we saw that in this episode, and Jordan broke down about it. We obviously saw Simone's reaction as well, on Homecoming especially. um and that being said, she did point out some things to him, and so by the time that he uh you know, cried on Spencer's shoulder after the letter, which I think people were asking, how did the letter come about? I honestly think this is what happened. I think that Simone left after she said what she said. She went
Mm-hmm.
home to write the letter and then just dropped the letter back off because she still lives in, like, what is it, Malibu or Beverly Hills. So I think they changed it to Beverly Hills, but she still lives in Beverly Hills, so she's not that far from them. So I think that she just went home, wrote the letter, dropped it off. I don't even know if she gave it to him like in person. I think she might
I
have just
think
like
she dropped it
left
out the
it.
door. Like, the editing was
Literally.
weird when you watched it live first, but when you rewatch it back, I think they had their fight. They kind of went their separate ways.
Right.
She
And then
went
she,
home, blowed off some steam, and I think it hit her like, this is something
yeah,
that
that this is
needs to
because
happen.
they were, right, they were like married, and so it they didn't want to she didn't want to leave it on an awkward note. So I think that or
Mm-hmm.
this is the way that I'm reasoning it in my head, is that she went home, like you said, cooled off, and then literally just like the equivalent of dropping it in the mail slot, like, is what happened, I'm assuming. um but again, so Spencer was there for Jordan after he found out that he and Simone broke up, and he calls Layla and Liv to come to the field. Uh, and Jordan seemed to get over it right
That
quick. Of
was
course, he's not.
insane. And this has been like a source of discourse. I really do think they're going to address the breakup more next week.
They have
I
to.
don't think I don't think they're just gonna blow it off and pretend it never happened. I really do think
They're not.
they're going to address. You don't think so?
No, 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 no. I'm saying they're not. They're not going to just blow it off.
Oh, okay, okay. I
I
thought
just
you said
happened
they're
to be
not going to
laughing because
address
I
it.
thought it
That'd be
was.
a
I thought
bad
it,
look. I really do think they're going to address
no, they're
the
definitely
breakup
going to
a little
address
bit
it.
more next week. I feel like people forget that technically Homecoming is supposed to be a little bit ahead. Isn't it supposed to be like a month ahead or like a couple weeks?
I think they got. I think they got on the same timeline now.
Oh,
I
that's
think they
awkward.
had to. Yeah.
Oh.
Once
Oh.
Jordan, once Jordan went for the second time, they were on the same timeline.
So,
But
wait, so does that mean that next week's episode will be in line with the Homecoming episode that airs right after, or is the episode
yep,
next week in line with the home? Oh,
yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah. They had
Wow.
to for
Okay,
this
I see. I
particular
thought that the
storyline.
Homecoming episode was a couple weeks, that the one that aired last was a couple weeks after break, and so she came back after like spending time with her family or whatever and was like reeling over the breakup, and then we would see Jordan's version next week on Homecoming, I mean on All American, once they caught up to that timeline, but they're on the same
No.
page now.
See, I think that fall break isn't that long. I think fall break is like a week, if that.
Interesting.
I mean, just like Jordan said that he and Layla went
Yeah, he
he
said
and
they went
Layla went to
last
San
week.
Diego last week. So it's
Mm-hmm.
this has been very short. So basically Jordan was just in Atlanta what 2ish week what is it, she Layla said I haven't seen you since you've been back. So it's just been a couple of weeks since Jordan's been in Atlanta. So it
Okay.
hasn't been that long since they've seen each other. But yeah, they're on the same timeline. Is that that point? They're on the same timeline
Wow.
now, and so I do think that they're. I still do think that we're gonna see more from Jordan. He did say, he said he didn't want to talk about the breakup
So that
anymore,
means that
and
he's going to be bearing those feelings about the breakup until next week.
I don't know how it's gonna manifest, but I think it'll come up again.
It has to. I mean, he has to deal with it. I mean, this is a relationship that was a really big part of his development, a really big part of his storyline. There's just no way they're going to skip over him getting the closure that he needs. Like, it just doesn't make sense for him to be crying in Spencer's arm and then, oh, I'm happy now. Like, he has to
Well, and
deal with
here's the
it.
thing.
There has to be a storyline that deals with this.
Right. I don't think that he was happy. I think that he was just done talking about it for the day. And even though as cute, as adorable as it was, the "I want Layla" comment and the longing looks that they were giving to each other, which is still very real. I think the "I want Layla" was a Freudian slip. I mean, he has been unaware of his feelings for this entire time, and he was still doing essentially the same thing without saying the words "I want Layla" throughout the entire episode. And that was still when he was with Simone. So basically, he's just vocalizing
Basically,
the
vocalizing his
feelings.
inner thoughts.
Exactly, vocalizing his inner thoughts. So it wasn't just that he was over it completely, but it was just a Freudian slip, something that he didn't mean to say, but vocalizing his inner
Mm-hmm.
thoughts. And that doesn't mean that he's completely over Simone yet. Even
Mm-hmm.
though I'm very glad, because it looks like the friend group will finally start to see what
And
has
that
been
makes me
happening.
happy because I feel like a really big criticism of Jordala that I just personally just don't understand is a lot of people are saying that they don't think that they're emotionally cheating and they feel like it's been too platonic, and they're comparing them to Damone and saying that you look at Damone and how they almost kiss and things like that, and Jordala just isn't on that same level. And like that's been one of my biggest like pet peeves about like the discourse surrounding these two ships, because I feel like Damone's dynamic and Jordala's dynamics are so different. They're almost
Yeah,
like foils of each other. And I feel like NK used these dynamics to show I tweeted about this the other day. I feel like she used these dynamics to show the different types of emotional cheating that can manifest. I feel like Damone's was more like immediate, like more intense. Like you literally saw it from the backdoor pilot. Like it was an instant connection. Where with Jordala, like Jordan and Layla are two people who have known each other since they were kids. And so they approached that dynamic from a different direction. It was more
right.
subtle. By episode, it was slow burning. Like we see that dynamic build and those feelings crept up on them. They didn't really expect that to happen. With Damone, I just feel like it was a little bit more different.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Have been shouting that from the rooftops for the past couple of weeks. That they are very different. They are very different situations, and so it's going to be interesting. Even though I do feel like Layla, and I've been very honest about this, I feel like Layla is more aware than she lets on to the audience. But it'll be very interesting to see them both become more fully aware of their feelings over the course of the next 2 episodes
I
and
told my
beyond.
friend this. It feels Jordan and Layla have both had moments that have stuck out to me, like specific moments in episodes where you see them for a split second. They realize that they feel something. and they brush it off.
Yeah.
For Jordan,
Completely.
I feel like his big moment was prom,
Yeah.
when he was leaving the studio and he did a double take at Layla and Clay. For a split second, you see that he feels something. He brushes it off as if it never happened, or he was imagining it. And then the same thing, kind of a similar situation happened with Layla in the phone call that she had with Jordan when her
Right.
dad told her to put herself out there. The logical choice that she wanted to make was Clay, but her heart led her to Jordan. And
Right.
you see for a split second on the phone that there is something there, especially when she brings up Simone. But then after they talk about her, she almost tries to brush it off as if she's imagining it or she's bringing herself back to reality. So I think that they're both aware somewhat of this dynamic. I think it's scary for them to want to fully accept it or fully acknowledge that it's there because of the mess that it'll bring. If that
Right.
makes any sense.
No. It makes complete sense. And to wrap up this, because we gotta hop to Spencer and Liv. Absolutely, and I think one of the things that makes it so interesting is that I think there's chemistry, and I think the chemistry is evidenced in this. The fact that after prom, there was just like, how could Jordan, there was this idea of like, how could Jordan like look at Layla like that and be jealous when Simone just left and she's just gone for like a tournament and he's looking at Layla like this. Literally the entire like narrative shifted after 412, and it was just like, how can Layla do this? How can she go after this man who's married and who she was in the wedding? And now it's shifting back to like, how can Jordan be so over Simone so quickly? And so it like, because to your point that they have these moments of awareness, and I think their moments of awareness also for the both of them came out in the studio as well. It just makes it so much more, it makes it that much more interesting for when like the full realization will occur, because it's not like they're completely oblivious to what's going on, especially Jordan now sort of tripping up on his words at the end there. And yeah, someone's gonna notice the long he looks. Eventually, they've already started to.
Aware, but I do think that Jordan is gonna be the first one
to fully accept it. Yeah,
to fully accept it and want to act on it and want to put himself out there. I especially feel like, I don't know if he's gonna come to terms with it next week or maybe more in the finale, but I feel like something has to occur there next week because Simone has now put that in his mind. Like, it's gonna be something that he thinks about for sure next week.
Right. And so that's that, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in predictions. But Spencer was basically looking for a reason in this episode to cancel the launch of his product line. And he was talking to Liv. Liv was trying to talk him out, and did talk him out of canceling the launch. And he, Liv was telling him a little bit about what was going on with Wade. He was defending Wade because he and Wade are pals now. And basically it was literally, again, him finding out by what happened with what occurred with Simone and the whole Jordan thing. He literally goes to go talk to Wade, talks to Olivia first, and Olivia tries to calm him down. He does not calm him down because he's Spencer. So he pushes Wade against the locker, and Wade puts on this nice guy act and basically proves that it wasn't him, because he was in this QB meeting. So that happens. He then again goes to Liv and is just like, it wasn't Wade that did this. And his whole storyline was literally just him getting ready for this launch, besides like this being involved in the Liv NIL storyline. And it's so funny because it's like just so Spencer, and he's just like, I don't want to make a speech. And it's like, Spencer, you make speeches all the time. Goodbye. No, you make speeches all the time.
Giving a monologue.
Literally. And Coop tells him, and this is why I love Coop. Coop checking Spencer and being such a good friend to Spencer. And she's just like, stop whining, give the speech, because these kids look up to you and Dylan. and you have to do it for the kids that look up to you and Dylan. So he gives the speech. It was a great speech, by the way.
It was.
And
Yeah.
literally then says like he's going to give a quarter of the proceeds of his merch to the kids of South Crenshaw, basically as scholarships for them to pursue art, to pursue sports, and all of that stuff. Obviously, we found out that Wade was lying, and so we'll talk about that more in predictions. But what did you think about Spencer and what he was going through this episode?
I feel like Spencer's whole like "woe is me" storyline is just getting so repetitive. Like I feel like his whole like life is so hard. Like how am I supposed to play football, hang out with my girlfriend, and still find time to make money off this NIL thing? I just feel like he overthinks a lot of stuff.
Mm. He does overthink a lot, and again, like, this is why I think that they need to go back to season one, in the sense that they need more conversations with Spencer and Coop. Spencer and Coop used to have like multiple conversations an episode, and now that's like gone away. But I think that Coop is a really good sounding board for him, so that it doesn't, so that it doesn't, so that like it doesn't get lost, like who he is and what he's about. But that Coop can like check him, but like not only just check him, but also like encourage him in a way that like gets through to him. Because I feel like they're like using Billy as that right now, but I just think it works
It works
better
better with Coop
when it's
because
Coop.
they grew up together.
Right.
And like I feel like their relationship symbolizes home for Spencer and symbolizes where he came from, and so it was really nice for Coop to be the one to convince him to follow through with things and remind him of, I guess, of how he symbolizes hope in their neighborhood and how the kids look up to him. I think it was a really good conversation for them to have.
Right. And even like even legitimately Coop Coop being a part of his joy, like he's so joyful around Coop, and Olivia as well. But like to have other characters that he's like joyful around and like can let his guard down around, I think is so important for him and his character, so that he's not like constantly stressing out about these things. But again, to like, yeah, I think just emphasizing that relationship more, especially in season 5, I think is going to be like really really important, because he's about to go. I mean, I don't know if what they're gonna do for season 5, but just like for future storylines, so that he can continue to let his guard down instead of being so like we saw him early in this season, just like so down about himself, and even like last episode, like losing confidence. Coop is really important for him and for his confidence, and Liv is too. And speaking of Liv is busy. Liv is busy. They made a point to say that Liv was busy this week, because Liv is busy. Liv is just trying to figure out what is going on in her life. There was a whole juice thief thermos. It ended up being Layla, but she thought it was Patience and was really mad about it. But she just has a lot going on with this NIL article. She's still a sponsor, and she missed Jen's chip ceremony. I think it was her 6-month chip ceremony. She literally already knows about the Wade post, which we know tries to tell Spencer that she's going to handle it on her own. But again, she's still like figuring out things with this article while figuring out things with Jen. She thinks that Jen is using again, so she goes through Jen's things. This is what I loved about this storyline. We finally got a note about sponsee confidentiality, because it was touch and go there for a while, and I was just like, Liv is telling a lot about being a sponsor, and I was just like, I feel like there's confidentiality in this. And so finally that was brought up today, but it was like a point for Spencer, because it was like, oh, there's a lot of confidentiality to go around, because she was working on the article earlier. But basically, again, she was just like, I don't want to say like running around with it like a chicken with her head cut off, but almost. So much so that Jen disinvited her after she went through Jen's things to to her like ballet recital, and so much so that she second guesses herself on her correct instinct about Wade, because he quote unquote finds the guy who made the post about her. But she ends this episode on a downbeat because Jen essentially like breaks up with Liv as a sponsor. And that really gives Liv a check, and she's just like tells Jen how courageous she is. It was actually a very like Sam just kills these like emotional scenes.
It was a really sad scene.
Oh my gosh, you just feel for Liv all the time. And she was just like talking about how she wasn't that courageous when her sponsor stopped speaking to her, and I love this line, and she's just like, you can always call and I'll never be too busy again, and just like really trying to right her wrongs. She talks about it with Layla, and is just like, oh, I've been messing things up, and I feel like I've always been wrong. And so it was just like it was sad to see, because it's just like you're not always wrong, and like I know it feels like it right now, but you're not, and you're like your instincts are more often than not pretty spot on. So it'll be interesting. I really related
to that scene, especially about how she was so frustrated, like always being wrong and always messing things up, because I feel like that adjustment from high school to college is a tricky one, and she's balancing all these different like responsibilities and activities, and it's just all about adjustment. And so when she was beating herself up over that, it really hit close to home, because I feel like so many college freshmen have experienced that feeling.
Yeah. No, I 1000% agree. I 1000% agree. And so I'm excited, and again, we'll talk about this more when we get to predictions, but to see like where, to see her start to get some wins and start to realize that she's not always wrong, because I really think that she needs that right now, because she's not always wrong. And yeah, I'm really excited for that. The last thing I'll say is like, I just love that they keep giving cute Olivia moments, like a lot of I love yous, a lot of kisses, and just like showing them that they're still strong and solid despite everything that's been going on.
Probably one of the best depictions of like a healthy teen relationship on television, for sure.
Right. And even Spencer telling her, like, even if she is wrong, I still love you, and everybody's wrong at some point. Like, I love that. And you're right, very, very healthy. And I think that they've taken strides as a couple, and as like their foundation is friendship. So as friends, I think they've taken super, super strong strides in their communication. That I mean, audience, you know how I feel about the communication. But yeah, I think that they like this season has really been super, super solid for them. So that, in a nutshell, was the episode. And now let's go to predictions. Thanks for listening to Film Study and All-American Podcast. Stay tuned for our predictions.